Hello everyone, how is everyone doing? Welcome to yet another video right here on this channel. Thank you for tuning in, guys. And in today's video, I'm going to talk about one of the most bizarre cases I've ever covered here. Folks, this case, it happened over in the United States. In fact, it is currently ongoing, isn't it? More specifically, it is happening in the state of Colorado. The key figures involved in this particular case are Jon and Carie Hallford, a married couple who owned a funeral home and had a tendency to accumulate bodies in their possession. It's a very bizarre case, as I've already mentioned to you here. And it's a bit different from the criminal cases I usually bring here, but I think the story fits a bit here in the channel's theme. So, without further ado, let's go to the video. In a city called Colorado Springs, in the state of Colorado, in the United States, there was an ecological funeral home called Return to Nature. The eco-friendly funeral home was owned by husband and wife couple Jon and Carie Hallford. They each owned 50% of the funeral home and ran the business together. For those who don't know, an ecological funeral home, different from conventional funeral homes, performs burials with biodegradable coffins. These coffins decompose along with the bodies, thus avoiding possible damage to nature. The Hallfords purchased the funeral home in 2019. Prior to that, they had a lease with the property's previous owner. The funeral home was first licensed in 2017, but according to testimony, state agents did not conduct any inspections of the funeral home while it was operating. In this way, she worked away from the eyes of the authorities. However, in the year 2023, a complaint made by residents that there was a very strong bad smell coming from this funeral home would cause a macabre case to come to light. Following these complaints, a search warrant was issued. When asked about the bad smell, Jon Hallford claimed it was the result of his taxidermy hobby, which did not convince the police. It was then that the authorities decided to enter the building and came across no less than 189 bodies stored throughout the place, without refrigeration, in rooms infested by insects and liquid decomposition. It is estimated that some of the bodies had already been there for months. According to police, some bodies were on stretchers, and others were just lying on the floor or piled on top of other bodies. Additionally, piles of bodies blocked certain parts of the building. A photo taken from the scene shows approximately 40 bodies stacked on top of each other and in plastic bags inside a room. Officers also located several personal items that had been given to the funeral home by family members of the deceased with the intention that these items would be buried or placed with the remains. At the scene, decomposition fluids covered the floors. Larvae, flies, and other insects infested the building in some areas, covering the floor and also the bodies. In many of the clear plastic bags used, decomposition fluid filled these bags or caused them to tear, spilling human decomposition onto the ground. The scene was awful. As per the police, there were a total of 5 red and orange plastic buckets present in the building. In certain instances, these buckets were positioned beneath the corpses in order to gather the seeping decomposition fluid. Several of the agents who were gathering these bodies slipped in the decomposition fluid that was present in all areas. In fact, one of them ended up sustaining an injury. The initial officers who responded to investigate the reported incidents stated that upon their arrival at the location, they observed a liquid mark slowly spreading beneath the door, which they presumed to be the outcome of the body's decay. In other words, the problem was so serious that it was no longer just inside the building. The agents had to use various protective equipment to be able to handle the remains and remove them from there. The funeral home reported to the state of Colorado that the corpses in their possession had been appropriately disposed of. But in reality, instead of cremating or burying the bodies as reported, they were left to rot at room temperature for an unknown period of time. According to the investigations that followed, at least 190 death certificates were falsified by the couple. They also buried a woman in a grave that had been intended for a war veteran whose body was rotting inside the building. But why did the couple do this, after all? Why didn't they cremate or bury the bodies? Well, according to the police, the couple received payments from their families, which were intended for cremations and burials, and instead of carrying out the procedures, they spent the money on other things. According to the police, the couple bought new cars, cryptocurrencies, went to expensive restaurants in Las Vegas, and took several trips. Meanwhile, the bodies of hundreds of people rotted in the funeral home building. Even after the police made all these discoveries, the couple was able to answer for the crime in freedom until the investigations were concluded. They then took the opportunity to escape. This escape didn't last long, and in November 2023, they were arrested in the state of Oklahoma, which is over 530 miles from the state of Colorado. Apparently, they intended to leave the United States. After the couple's arrest, investigations continued. It was discovered that in addition to the funeral home, they had another building in a rural area that would also serve as a body storage facility. This building had makeshift refrigeration units that were not functioning. The couple's goal was to keep the bodies in these refrigeration units, but as they were not working, they left the bodies at the funeral home. According to prosecutors, as early as 2020, Jon Hallford was worried that his scheme would be discovered and he would be arrested. In a text message intercepted by police, Jon tells his wife that the best way to get rid of the bodies was to throw them in a large hole and then set them on fire. In those same messages, he says his only focus was keeping himself and his wife out of jail. Footage recorded by security cameras near the Hallfords' funeral home captured Jon using a stretcher to move the bodies to a van. Other images show Jon removing a street lamp so it would be dark and he could move more bodies without anyone seeing. These images were recorded between 1 a.m. and 3 a.m. According to police, most of the 190 victims' bodies should have been cremated. But what is known is that Jon told families that he cremated the bodies of their loved ones just to keep the payment without performing the service. He delivered ashes to family members saying they were those of the deceased, but the police discovered that they were actually a concrete mixture. The amounts charged by the funeral home varied between $1,290 and $1,895, with $1,290 for cremation and $1,895 for natural burial in biodegradable coffins. With the discovery and removal of these bodies, authorities have started working on identifying them with the intention of notifying the relatives of each one. According to authorities, if the Hallfords do not cooperate, it will be a challenging task as many bodies are in an advanced state of decomposition. At the first hearing held, a judge ruled that prosecutors presented enough evidence proving Jon and Carie Hallford's guilt. This first hearing focused on the amount spent by the couple with the money they embezzled from cremations. According to prosecutors, in November 2021, the couple purchased a GMC Yukon for nearly $93,000 and then sold it for around $79,000 on June 13, 2022. 2 days later, on June 15th, prosecutors said they purchased an Infiniti for nearly $29,000. This car was sold in May 2023. Testimony at the hearings provided more details about the use of money families and insurers paid to cover cremations and burials. The couple used some of that money for lavish personal expenses, including trips to California, Florida, and Las Vegas. Additionally, they spent $31,000 on cryptocurrencies, laser body sculpting, and shopping at luxury stores. It was also shown that from 2020 to 2023, Jon Hallford purchased more than 600 kilograms of concrete mix. And that was what the couple placed in the urns and handed over to the family of the deceased, saying they were his ashes. Prosecutors confirmed that several of the deceased's relatives received fake ashes instead of cremated remains. In total, the Hallford couple faced 190 charges, one charge for each corpse found at the funeral home. They will also face 5 counts of theft, 4 counts of money laundering, and more than 50 counts of forgery.
Where's the rest of my son's body? The 100 pounds he lost during decomposition while he laid in your funeral home.
Both Jon and Carie remained in custody, and a bail of $1 million was set for each of them, ensuring that they would not be released until the required amount was paid. Later, after a request from the defense, this bail was reduced to $154,000 for Jon and $100,000 for Carie. Jon paid this bail amount to be able to face his crimes while free, whereas Carie did not pay the bail amount and remains in custody. Jon had to hand over his passport, was banned from having contact with the customers he harmed, and is being monitored by GPS. At a press conference, authorities said they hope to place Jon and Carie Hallford together in the same trial. Authorities also said that of the 190 bodies, 22 have not yet been identified, and because of this, anyone who was a customer of the funeral home should contact the police. During the investigation, police spoke with a coroner named Randy Keller, who reported that he already had suspicions about the funeral home. According to Randy, 3 years before the macabre discovery, he was concerned about the inadequate refrigeration of bodies at the funeral home, and even reported it to a state agency at the time. However, the coroner did not receive any response from the state agency, which, according to sources, was overwhelmed in monitoring other funeral homes. According to analysts, the state of Colorado has the weakest rules regarding funeral homes in the United States. They do not have routine inspections or qualification requirements for funeral home operators. The Hallfords were storing bodies as early as 2019, and the count grew over the next 4 years. Contacted by journalists, the Colorado Department of Regulatory Agencies confirmed that they received an email from coroner Randy Keller in May 2020, but did not say why they did not check the complaint. This is not the first absurd case involving a funeral home in the state of Colorado. Years before, another funeral home was closed for selling bodies. During another hearing, a mother who received her son's fake ashes questioned Jon Hallford about what he had done to her son. Very emotional, the woman said that the funeral home gave her a container that was supposed to contain her son's ashes, but it wasn't really him. She said, crying, that she enjoyed hugging and rocking her son's ashes, but now she felt completely deceived. Several other families who were also deceived by the couple attended the hearing and said they were outraged by the fact that Jon Hallford could be free for the crime. The press tried to talk to the couple, but neither of them wanted to give an interview. Colorado state authorities asked the Environmental Protection Agency to demolish the building housing the funeral home. Jon and Carie Hallford will be tried later this year, and it is likely, if convicted, that they will face a sentence of more than 20 years. They were only caught because they were storing those bodies there at their funeral home. Let's think about it. Let's suppose that if they had a more isolated area and buried those bodies, probably no one would know. Well, it's something to think about, isn't it? Thank you very much for watching until the end. I'll be going now. Big hug, and see you next time.